What is up, guys? Trying this again back from Facebook. Apologies, trying something new, seeing if we can do something special, get it on more platforms. Don't know if that's going to work, but we're going to go back to our roots and dig into it a little bit later when it's not live and we don't have all of our fans watching. So apologies if you guys were here. We'll be back, so we're here now. Let's see what we got, though, because we got some fun stuff on deck. All right, come over here, back to this purple car, back with Arturo. Oh, I don't know why it's turning. All right, Arturo.
Hey.
What's been going on? What have you been doing to this baby?
Cam, in case you can't tell.
Yes, Cam, in case you can't tell, the car does not look like it got a cam, but it did. So if you tuned in last week, you would see that he had the car apart, and this boy is quick. So he got her all back, ready to get tuning, making power, getting that shaker shaking, and making all the good noises. So you guys know we love our 5.7s here. This one's no exception. Arturo put his touch on it, making sure we know where everything's going, taking his time, marking it, doing it right. So little green things like that, that's how we see that they're torqued, aligned, stuff like that. Pointed it out, I believe, last time, but good to point on it because I do have some people ask, what's all that green? And it lets us know it's torqued. So it's a quick little visual. Hey, we're good. So gotta love it. Make sure as we go, questions, comments, could you, should use, you throw those in there. We will be answering those live. So Arturo, finish this up. What's next for you?
Well, we'd be running right now if it wasn't for this pole prick over here.
Oh, what happened, man?
If you look right there.
Oh, no. If you guys can see in that green, that crack.
Pretty visible.
No good. So
if you look over here.
Oh. But, yeah. So, anything like that, crack manifold. This is before the front O2, so this is going to throw off fueling. So anytime we do anything with headers, even if they've already been installed before, already been smoke test, we make sure we smoke test them. Head them out. This is the time to check. Now we know that there's something here that will give us problems with tuning. So we are in contact with the customers. He bought these to get them warranted through the company. Once they're back, they'll get thrown back on, and then it will be on the rollers. So a little bit of a waiting game there, not the worst, but glad we found it now. Arturo doing his due diligence to make sure that everything's 100%. So, the GOAT. Thank you, Arturo.
Of course.
All right, let's see what else we got. This beautiful Jeep that has been in this limbo mode. So we got cam bearings. They showed up. Cam tool, all that fun stuff. The front, not fitting. All of them go in once it gets to the front. No bueno. The cam bearings are meant for the car, but there is a tolerance issue there. So we are getting another set shipped out to try. We've replaced another set today, actually on this car, and that one went in. So, just one of those small tolerance issues, relying on third-party vendors. We try to make as much in-house. Unfortunately, we don't have the provisions to make cam bearings right now. At some point that would be nice, but not the case. What are you doing, Dan? Laying on the ground, getting all filthy? Motor back in. So he's in the process.
This has a bad header, so we're taking the header off and we're pushing it out to the parking lot to get the new one.
All right. So kind of like what Arturo is facing when we put the headers back on. We just found that there is a leak. No good. So again, throwing off fuel trims. So we're going sent out, taken care of. Dan is in the process of putting the subframe back in the vehicle. So right now he's messing with the steering shaft. Obviously those need to get disconnected as you drop the vehicle. But very close here. Back to you as soon as the live is over. But yeah, another cammed 5.7. It is, a lot of cams going on, a lot of chop. So we like that. So, fun stuff, y'all. My phone is going in and out. If you are also experiencing connection issues, please let us know. As well as comments, questions, could you, should you. So, let's see what else we got. WK1 in the deck, baby. So, this one is here knocking real bad. Little worse for wear, but it's an older truck, higher mileage. So over there, if you see, we have a brand new short block for her. So I'll be progressing on that truck with Dan. We will be putting this motor in there. This is a gentleman off our football team, so suited, booted, ready to rock and roll for him. Want to make sure that this truck is cooking for him and not knocking. So turbo kit progression. Look at this. Woo! Woo! Pretty, pretty, pretty. So very close. We get closer each day with it. Fabricator doing work, getting on those pretty colors. Hubba, hubba. Very nice. Let's see what else we got on deck. Ooh! A little product spotlight. Let me grab my flashlight. Let me get mocked by Arturo. I don't know where my flashlight is, so we're going to go in dark here, y'all. But Bevo, Billet Evolution, vented street race catch can, dash 10 fittings, going straight to the valve cover back there. Again, Billet Evolution, billet valve covers in black. This thing is black on black on black. Billet Evolution, clutched, rings of hell, swappable pulley. Look at this. Ooh-wee. Again, black on black on black. Black wheels, black car, black interior, black blower, black catch cans, black valve cover. All of it, baby. All of it. So this thing, I love this car, man. But new billet, race catch can. Make sure we get all the PCV ventilation, blocking it up off there in the blower so you don't have a huge vacuum leak. Make sure that if you do a race catch can, if you feed it back into the blower right there, it's post throttle body. So this is going to become a vacuum leak. So you want to make sure you cap one side and then, you know, you could go to both, but you want to make sure you don't feed it back in there because it will suck air through and it will become a vacuum leak. Just a little tech tip there in case you guys have one of these installing it on your own car. So, yeah, just a good little knowledge drop on you. Arturo's still mocking me, but that's what he does best. I think it's Dan, too. We all do it. Let's see what else we got. Ooh, I know I keep lusting over this Jeep, but the more it gets covered with this matte white. Talk to me. Look at that. I don't know. I feel like I gotta get my car wrapped at some point. A lot of rust repair first, but gotta get my car wrapped. So, look at this. Sexy. Let's go see what Joe's doing. Old Billet Evolution. I think there's a creature in the office, but new CNCs, if you haven't seen. Oh my. What you doing, Joe? Let the people know.
Trimming the device.
You're trimming it?
Tramming.
Tramming, what does that mean?
Making sure they're straight.
Making sure they're straight. That's important when making things such as billet valve covers. Look at this. Look at all this billet goodness, baby. Oh my. Ooh. I don't know if I can show this, y'all. I think this might get taken down. I think this is terms of service violation with how sexy all this is. But, I mean, we got, you know, how many we got? 2, 4, 6, 8. We got tons. We got tons on deck. We got way more than I can count. I can't count that high. I don't have this many fingers. But if you need billet valve covers, fresh off the mill. Golly, look at that shine. Oh my God, that is a thing of beauty. Joe's doing his magic. Had a couple setbacks, finally up and running, a couple of leaks out of the machine, but growing pains, brand new 5-axis for Joe to play with, and he is having fun. So, look at him get his work in. He loves these things. Also, got a brand new lathe as well. Much bigger. This one auto feeds, right? Yes. So this one auto feeds stock in, so he doesn't have to go in as much, touch it as much. He just kind of loads it, away he goes. He can focus on making more valve covers, as well as, if we look over there, more catch cans. We have a ton on deck. If you need a race catch can, if you need a street catch can, if you need a coaster, we probably can get you right. But more importantly, catch cans on deck. Let us know. As well as, if you didn't know, custom engraving. So if you want a custom engrave, we use a laser to engrave it into the anodization. We can do it. Whatever you want, let us know. We can probably make it happen for you. So, Same thing like this. Little Trackhawk Evil Chicken. So, yeah, cruising, moving, having fun, making parts, breaking hearts, as Joe says. He is in his zone. Sorry for bothering him. Also, don't forget, single-size clutch pulleys, baby. We got them. Let us know. We can make your dreams come true. So let's see if Jeremy's ready for the could you, should you. I think he's trying to kill a fly in here. All jokes, but is it really?
No jokes.
No jokes. It's serious. It's all war. Look at this.
Yeah.
Man, it's ready.
I am ready. Hold on, scoot over.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're okay.
I'm in your zone, yo.
Ready. Not taking me out of the picture, sorry. What's going on, everybody? We have a fly pandemic going on right now.
All right. Sorry for not saying hi to y'all. I don't know why the shop phone is not loading any comments. Tons of people asking me how I'm doing. I'm doing great. Sorry I didn't say anything earlier. I see no purple cars. There's a purple car over there. It's just not your
Say hi,
purple.
buddy.
We got
There you go.
the creature on deck.
It's been a while since he said hi. So he wanted to make his appearance.
Yep.
So, Remy, all right. He's 8 months old, if anybody's wondering.
Big dog.
Young for taking. Okay.
Speaking
all
of
right.
big dogs.
Okay. All right. All
He's
right.
a lover.
He's a lover. All right. Let's get to it. All of the questions. All right. Go back.
Tulo, touch
Go
the
back.
swatter while it's on.
What?
Jeff wants me to touch it while it's on. Where's the swatter?
What's this? No, don't do. No.
Okay.
Stop.
All right.
That's bad. OSHA. HR's right there.
I'm clocked
All right.
out. It's okay.
So, yeah, so we'll get to the fun, and we'll get into the questions. The, could you, should you?
Should use.
Turbo only is the way. That is correct.
Yes.
Why is everybody calling it the exact moment we get on here? All
Literally
right.
everyone
So,
on deck.
yeah, we'll get into questions. We'll get into could you, should yous. The fun segment here. So, thanks for checking in on a weekly basis, guys, where we try to answer your questions. So,
Mm-hmm.
got any for me out the gate?
First one, I saw this last night while I was scrolling the Facebook. Could you, should you put a 6.4 cam and a 5.7? I believe we touched on this way back, but it's a
Yeah.
good refresher because I do see it come up.
Yeah, I think that was last year, actually. We talked
I think
about
it was.
So, could you, should you? I'm going to say no. Could you? I mean,
Yeah,
in theory, yes,
you
you
can.
can. You can put the cam in. Should you? No, absolutely not. If you're going to go through the headache of pulling a motor completely apart to change a camshaft, do something that's beneficial, okay? So, understand that a camshaft profile is based off of displacement, compression, all the characteristics of intake, exhaust, torque motor, all of that. So why would you take something for a high compression, big stroked motor and put it into a low 5.7 and expect anything really out of it? Normally what I see is the gains come from just a tune alone, you know what I mean? So that the cam itself is not really beneficial when you compare the specifications for it. So if you're going to go through that headache, just buy a cam. They're not that expensive and comparative for all the things you need to do still if you do a 392 swap. So that's definitely a no on the should you. So yeah, in theory you can put it in there. Don't. I have tune cars for it because they did it, and obviously it needs a tune. So you're going to be forced into doing that anyways. But just don't stop.
As far into it as you get,
Yeah.
get a properly spec cam, you'll make way more power, you'll enjoy it way more.
Yeah. Just
Do it right the
stop.
first time and don't cry.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Cry once, buy
Yep.
once. So it's just not worth it in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah, but good one to tap on there. So the other one leading into that, we were supposed to talk on it last week. We had a lot of good subjects brought up, but I'm going to tap on it now because I was talking to a customer and said I'd go into detail, so I missed it by a week. But should I run Hellcat injectors on my boosted 392 5.7 application?
Still at one in my mouth.
So this is the thing about it. When you break down the characteristics of what these injectors flow in regards to a Hellcat, the biggest variance you're going to see is what they are rated at, what the fuel pressure is. So when I say rating, normally an injector is rated at some sort of fuel pressure. Okay, so keep that in mind. For the Hemi platform, when you research the actual injector flow characteristics, it's based off of around 60 psi. That is essentially what they're trying to target on most of these applications in an idle situation. Hellcat powered vehicles have fuel pressure control module based computers essentially that can regulate and change the fuel pressure. Okay, so when we throw a Hellcat injector into a Hellcat and then we crank up fuel pressure to 80 to 100 psi depending on the year and the model, they flow pretty well. Okay, now you put that into a 6.2 or into a 6.4 or a 5.7, 6.1. The fuel pressure on these is around 58 to 60 psi in stock form. Now, the reason most people will run these is because they're going with a boosted application. So we're going to focus on that specifically. So being the factory fuel system is what we call a returnless style fuel system, also known as a deadhead or bulkhead fuel system. What that means is the fuel is fed to the engine, but it doesn't return to the gas tank. So that's what all of those mean. So basically these fuel pumps are pushing the fuel as hard as they can to a fuel rail and injector that's the end of it. Dead end like a road, right? There's no return going back. One way, straight to the injectors. So what happens on a boosted application with this style fuel system is every pound of boost you introduce, you are going to lose that amount of fuel pressure on the backside. Meaning, if you're at 60 psi and running 10 psi of boost, you're going to be at 50 psi. Now, on top of it, you are going to have a strain on the fuel system because the fuel pump is not designed for it, and it will struggle a little bit. So you're going to see fuel pressure drop even more in a given application just from the overload of what it's trying to overcome at the same time. So it's not uncommon to see 45 to 50 psi on a standard boosted 5.7 392 for 6 to 8 psi of boost. Okay, so a Hellcat injector is rated at the 600 cc's that you see here, the 58 pounds they call it, right around 600 cc's. That's at 60 psi. Now, like I said, Hellcats run a minimum of 80. Other red eyes and everything like that go upwards of 100. So at 80 psi, they flow more than the 600 cc. But on a 5.7, 392, 6.1, any of those applications with a bulkhead returnless style fuel system, your fuel pressure is going to be lower, 10 to 15 psi below what it's rated at. So when you actually are comparing, what the fuel characteristics are of that injector, it's not very good. This is why we see Hellcat injectors tap out sometimes at 500, 550 when you're on a boosted application. Even NA cars where a tired fuel pump, we've seen on E85, they struggle over 500 wheel horsepower naturally aspirated on E85. So when you're spending all of this money to introduce boost into your NA engine, don't skimp on the fuel system.
No.
Okay, now we throw ID1050s on our boosted applications, and people go, that's over-injectoring it. Why would you do that? Well, yes, it's over-injector, right? So when the fuel pressure drops to 45, 50 psi, well, guess what? Injector Dynamics rates their injectors based on 43 psi. Okay, so when you drop from your 60 to your 50 or 45, you're actually still in that area of where that injector was tested at. So you have plenty of injector. I'd rather have a little more than not enough.
Safety.
Safety. Right?
Number one, it keeps you alive.
Could you run Hellcat injectors on a boosted NA application that's not a Hellcat? People do it, yes. Should you? I don't think so, and I'm not a big fan of it because you are right at that edge of that injector duty cycle and really relying on a healthy fuel pump. So you can get a booster pump to kind of help, Band-Aid, right? You can throw 2 or 3 fuel pumps in a bulkhead fuel system with a small fuel rail, Band-Aid. You are relying on this injector to be able to keep up with it. And imagine over miles when it gets dirty, or you get a really cold day out, right? You tune it when it's 90 degrees out, but then in a 30-degree ambient temp environment, all of a sudden you're making way more horsepower. Well, you don't have an injector that can compensate for it. So don't skimp on the injector. This is why. So I get it, the internet says you can. I get it, people do it all the time. Most of these people don't know what their injector duty cycle is or what their fuel pressure is. They just say that they were told they can do it, or that shop said that they could do it. Just be smart about why you're doing what you're doing, okay? A lot of shops like to say yes. Why? Some shops are so scared to throw prices at customers that they will do the cheapest that they can just to get that customer in the door. It doesn't mean it's right. That's why we won't flex. We are injector dynamics on all of our builds. Doesn't matter if it's a 6.1. Doesn't matter if it's a 1500 wheel horsepower twin turbo setup. We run injector dynamics and we over injector just a little bit every time just to make sure. You never know, and you don't want to ride the fine edge when it comes to your fuel system. There are other areas where you can try and find something more budget friendly, but the injectors, I really don't think that's the area to ever skimp in. So hopefully, you know who you are that I was talking to you, and anybody else that might be looking to boost their non-Hellcat powered vehicle and trying to cut costs or save where you can, the injectors is not the place to do it, in my opinion. So, and that is the reason why. So fuel pressure, don't forget fuel pressure is just as important as how big the injector can flow. So,
tying into that, Mr. Robinson asks if you've ever seen what happens when you run out of injector and don't get enough fuel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So naturally, what's going to happen? It's going to lean out. Right, the injector will try in any given, based on the tune, as long as it's set up right, it's definitely going to try to deliver what it needs. But when it can't, you're going to lean out. So the AFR starts to rise. And as you know, if you've heard it, lean is mean, right? You might feel it feels really good for a split second because
they always run the best before they blow up.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's most commonly due to a fueling issue. But it melts. I mean, it gets hot. Because essentially what's happening, leaner conditions, they say it's mean because it burns hotter. That's one reason why we run a richer AFR when it comes to, lambda commanded in a boosted versus NA application. It's to help cool things and fight detonation. So not only does it get hotter naturally in regards to the combustion itself, but you're going to be battling detonation. And a lean detonation cause it, normally it's wide open throttle when you're struggling for fuel. It's not pretty. Not pretty at all. So I absolutely have. You can search on the internet. You'll see big chunks of piston missing, and it melted away. Skirts melted down. It leaves damage on cylinder walls.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Trying to cheap out and save a few $100 in the injector, and then when it takes out your motor, you end up paying way more in the long run.
Yeah,
so,
that's the big thing. A lot of people, I get it in the time you're trying to save where you can, but motors are way more expensive than that set of injectors initially. Also, too, piggybacking on that, maintaining your injectors is just as important as your oil changes. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen guys where motors let go, racing whatever, and then they wait 6 months to get their motor, have the ability to buy a motor, whatever the case may be, and then bam, put it back together and just throw the injectors in, especially on an E85 or race fuel based application. Man, even if you're driving it, we recommend to clean them once a year, but let alone if something sits. So any vehicle we have here that sits for any period of time, we have injector cleaners here for that reason. And we've saved several vehicles. I know, Jeff, you're in here. You can contest to it, man. I mean, he had no injector issues before, but just from sitting, it took a while to get the motor situation squared away on his build and figuring out what direction we were going to go. We flowed his ID 1700s and even sent them to Injector Dynamic to test. And at idle, actually just above idle, 2 milliseconds, there was a 6% variance from the highest to lowest injector. And even Injector Dynamics said, we can't do anything about it. It's just what happened over time. So he had to sadly get a whole new set of injectors. But sucking it up and getting them now is going to save him long term, because man, if I put those injectors in, that could have led to not only damage, but even Injector Dynamics said it's going to be a rough idle. It's going to be hard to tune that. So it's things like that, the maintenance of the injector. So the fuel system, nowhere. Don't skimp on that, guys.
Nope.
Just do not.
Buy once, cry once, do it right.
Fuel systems too. Since we're on it, when we spec fuel systems from 4, we always do the L4.
Yes.
I know guys talking about the L2 series, L3 series, L4. When you break down the cost difference between an L2 and an L4, it's only a few $100. And the reality is the parallel L4 system is superior in many ways. So even if you're not really expecting super high horsepower, I'm telling you, parallel is the way to go with proper fittings, PTFE, and making sure it's done right one time. I can't tell you how many customers we had to redo fuel systems because they were plumbed wrong. They used the cheaper hose and fittings that started deteriorating.
3/8-inch return lines out the middle of the rail.
Yeah, that was the feed.
Oh, that was a feed? I forgot. Oh, no.
It was a 3-inch line, and then it went to an 1/8 MPT feed into a rail. That was the feed to the driver's side bank on a fuel system, and then it crossed over to the passenger side, but that was supposed to be enough for it. So
forgot.
Yeah, so we've seen it all. Don't skimp anywhere on the fuel system. It is the bloodline of your engine, your vehicle, everything when it comes down to it, okay? Please listen to that. So
same thing Michael Meekins points out in the comments to check the injector O-rings. We've seen them get damaged, and they've caused vacuum leaks, other things. It's already out. Check it. If you see damage, it's a 50-cent O-ring?
Not even, So, and for those to get background on Michael Meekins, his motor was put back together, tuning it, and it was doing something really weird we've never seen before. And I'm sitting there, I'm telling you, 20, 30 revisions in, trying to help him identify what it was. When the engine was installed, not by us, a different shop, but The way they ran the fuel line on the fuel rail gave it a little extra tension, and it just had enough to where on installation it kind of pinched the O-ring. He addressed that without a tuning change, put it in. Was having an issue coming on decel, it was stalling. And I told him, like, it doesn't make sense. So he went on, addressed the issue, and literally without a tune change, the truck stopped stalling. It's just little things like that. Sometimes the smallest pieces of it. You know, E85 especially is very harsh.
Yes.
So yeah, anytime something sits, inspect everything. These failures usually come down to the smallest little piece, man. I tell you, whether it's a O-ring, whether it's a fitting that just broke at some given time or worn through, or a hose that's pinched just wrong. It's usually the smallest little things that we see. So don't skimp on the fuel system.
And then one last question tying into that: do we offer injector cleaning as all a customer needs?
Yeah. So ours is a basic setup. We don't have a true flow test. We have vials that when we spray the injector, we make sure they all align. If we see any type of extreme variance, we do recommend to get them done. We just charge an hour of labor for us to do it. So we do a pre-clean or pre-inspection where we flow them. We go through the full cleaning, ultrasonic, do it a couple times, and then reflow them after to make sure everything's flat in regards to the test tubes, the vials of them. But, you know, for example, Injector Dynamics is a very, very sophisticated machine that gives exact flow rates at any given time over different pulse widths. We don't have something that big, but we just make sure all of them align and it works. So like I said, just for basic maintenance once a year, absolutely bring it in. 1 hour of labor and we can knock it out for you. But if you have any real concerns or it's a real big build and you really want to make sure they're precise, talk to the manufacturer or somebody with a more sophisticated business design for that. So, but we do general cleanings for them.
Yes, sir. All right, into more could you, should yous.
Yes.
Could you, should you? Bags of ice on the blower between runs. Can that, you know, cooling the top while the bottom's still on the, you know, motor, kind of the difference, would that hurt anything? Does it actually affect it that much?
We do it all the time, you know, whether it's a Whipple, whether it's a IHI, Magnuson. I have yet to see generally a true ill effect from it. You know, the biggest thing is make sure you drain the water correctly. I've seen some guys allow water to pool up on injector valleys and things like that. Just the biggest thing is make sure there's drainage there with it. So, yeah, it's been common practice for a very long time, and I really haven't seen anything in regards to a negative impact doing a cooling like that. Ice in a bag laying on top of a blower is not a hyper cool. It takes a second for that temperature to make it through, and the reality is that the blower is so hot that it starts to melt the ice very quickly and turns it into basically a stream very quickly. So I haven't seen any ill effects as long as you drain it correctly. So that's the one thing to keep an eye on. Like I said, valleys on top of engines where there's harnesses and plugs, that's where I've seen actual issues come from it. But if you drain it correctly, keep an eye on it. There's videos of us doing it at the racetrack. It is a good way to help cool it down. The trick to that, though, is you don't want to let it just sit for hours with it on top because it doesn't cool the fluid. So you want to make sure you do it for a little bit. Start it to allow the fluid of the blower intercooler to flow. Get some more hot fluid in it, and then you continue to do it. So my recommendation is quick little startup cycles that last 10 to 15 seconds of an idle to allow the fluid to flow a little bit more to suck the heat out of the other areas. Because if you're just cooling the blower down, it doesn't do the heat exchanger or the coolant pump or any of the coolant anywhere else but what's close to the blower.
Baking.
Right. So you do want to cycle it a few times in that cool down period, but I don't see any ill effects from it. I've done it on many of cars without an issue as long as you drain the water. So something a lot of people don't think about. They throw 5 bags on it, walk away, and then come back and, oh no, I'm misfiring, and it's an open injector circuit, and just make sure you drain the fluid.
Absolutely. If you don't want to do that much work and you don't like having to look at things and you just like pushing buttons and things happening, you can also do interchiller, IC chiller.
IC chillers, baby. Big fan of it, especially street cars. Obviously, race cars, it's very beneficial, but street car, honestly, the longer you let it idle, the cooler it gets, right? So very beneficial for anybody looking to hot lap something or in a bracket race where you have, you know, a lot of rounds that you're going in the same day. You know, that's one of the perks of the IC chiller is that essentially even after a pass, you shut it off, turn it back on, let it run. The longer you let it run, the cooler it gets. So you can assist it in the pits with a fan or two. You go get a battery operated fan here or there. The biggest thing with that when you are running a chiller in the pits is your transmission. Don't forget to keep an eye on that. That's why we like to throw a little fan underneath on the transpan. It goes a very long way. But yeah, absolutely. Chillers are the way to go. Absolutely.
Could you, should you leave off idle or stall the stock converter on a 5764 at the track?
It's going to be application specific. So it's not really a could you, should you, I guess that's just more of a question. So it is application specific. And you got to play around with it, and I've actually seen varying results from each vehicle too. So general rule of thumb, the way a torque converter works is you have a given stall. We'll use a low number just to make it easy, 1,000, right? Now, 1,000 is essentially where they spec it to lock up or, you know, engage fully like a manual car when you're fully off the clutch, right? Now, as you get close to that 1,000 mark, it's going to start to engage. So that's why even when you have a 4,000 stall at 2,500 RPM, the car starts to accelerate because it starts the engagement process. Now, the way, for the most part, torque converters are designed is the more torque you introduce, the higher it will flash. And part of the reason is a daily driven car, you know, with a 2,500 stall, you want to be able to take off from a red light before you get to 2,500. So if you slowly increase torque, it will slowly start to grab at a lower RPM, versus if you flash it real fast and give it a lot of torque, it might flash higher or even over that 2,500 stall because it's not actually engaging the lockup until it gets to that point. So generally what we see is on car chassis is they will excel by leaving off idle. So most of my customers can tell you that I will tell them to go up and just leave off idle and slam that gas as quickly as they can. Higher horsepower ones, you know, 1 second roll into the throttle, but that's what you'll see there. And because when you start to foot brake it and bring that RPM up, you're introducing torque, so it's going to start to engage more and more, so it's actually going to lock up sooner. And the reason you get a taller stall is to bypass the low torque range, right? So you're going to try to get it to hit peak torque on the engagement to pull you through that launch. So if you want it to flash higher, you can then just leave off idle, bring it to 1,000 RPM to get rid of some of the slack in the suspension, but you don't want to try and foot brake it right to what your stall is because it's actually going to leave softer for the most part. I say that it's reversed on the SUVs. I've noticed they actually like being foot braked a little bit. But for the car chassis, you got to play around. Every vehicle is different, but my rule of thumb is if you got real good prep, leave off idle. If it's crappy prep, then, you know, foot brake a little bit and it seems to leave softer, and then you play with it and figure it out, because variables are what tires you're running, tire pressure, the actual track prep. I mean, there's a lot that goes into
temperature outside.
Yeah, temperature of that, and the tire, and the sun where it's on the track. I mean, there's so
if
much.
It's in shade or not. I mean, good God.
Yeah, so much that goes into it. So that's where, when it comes to me and track support for tuning, we dial them in based on how you drive and what the vehicle likes. I've had guys run times off of foot brake, and I've had guys run off of leaving off idle. I think he even got his best time leaving off of launch control, which we never use. So just because it works for one doesn't mean it's going to work for you, and it's part of learning and seeing what the car likes with the setup that you have. So, but generally we always start with off idle and then see how we can progress from there.
So yeah, some of the comments saying that. So basically, just test it, see what the car likes the best, and go from there.
That's it.
So
yeah, you do one, you know, all three ways, and you review the logs, see what's producing the most. You know, every combination is a little bit different. So.
Absolutely. Could you, should you tune without a wideband?
So if you have a Hellcat powered vehicle that comes from the factory with a wideband, absolutely, you don't need one. Anything else, 6157s of any kind, 392s, you don't have a wideband built into your PCM or your car. So to see fueling outside of the narrowband range, which is anything aggressive, load, or wide open throttle, you need a wideband. Doesn't matter if you're stock. Okay, doesn't matter if you are bone stock getting a tune. If anybody tells you don't need a wideband in a 6157 or 392 6.4 vehicle, they're lying to you, because you need to ask your tuner after the wide open throttle pull, what was my AFR at 5,000 RPM? If they can't tell you, then, you know, if you don't know, how do they know? And if they don't know, how do they know what adjustments are being made? So if you want a true optimized tune, you want to know what your fueling is at any given RPM range. So, you know, the only time we don't, you know, offer a wideband is if the tuning is going to be done in-house for the wide open throttle portion, because we use our own wideband. Or if you're working through a partner shop and the same thing, they're using a wideband from their dyno, as long as I have the AFR mapped next to the RPM, I can dial it in and you're getting a proper tune. But if any tuner is telling you, hey, no, you're just bolt on your stock, you're fine, you don't need you're not actually getting a proper tune done. If they can't truly, honestly tell you what the AFR is, because they don't have a gauge telling them, then how are you truly getting a dialed-in vehicle? How is it reliable? How is it the most power? How is it safe?
Kind of like fuel system safety. It's key,
So,
man.
yes,
So that's
really
why
important.
anyone with remote tuning quotes, anything like that, 576164 guys, you'll notice that AEM UEGO wideband. It is for that, so we know what is going on.
Another piggybacking off of that, because I've had him been asked, one or two. Perfect world, every customer of mine would have two, and I'd get both banks, okay? Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah. We will answer that one too. But two, ideal in a perfect world is two, not required for the most part. That the way these engines work is every cylinder should be consuming the same amount of fuel. So if I measure 1, if I measure 2, 4, or 8, it should be the same reading. So we are relying on it being mechanically sound. So most common, we do a single wideband in the driver's side pre-cat, so we get the most accurate reading. This is in the assumption that the passenger bank is burning the same amount of fuel in all 4 cylinders. So perfect world is 2, but for 95% of our customers, 1 is just fine. And like I said, we say driver's side pre-cat if you can. I understand on stock or bolt-on vehicles with stock cats, we say you can go into the cat. I just need to know, so I know the adjustment needing to be made because it's flowing through a cat. But good question. Good question. So very important one. Could you, should you pull up on a DSM with a loud drivetrain and expect anything good to happen for you?
Probably, because it's a 4G63, so
yeah, it's not
crank walking and going to explode.
Yeah, it's not going to last. Probably has remain sealed too at the same time. So just drive around for 50 miles before he pulls over to put a quart of oil in it. That's speaking from experience. But I mean, for that one, you want to do the best, out of 5. So first to 3 wins, because it's probably going to make 2 or 3 of them, if that. So your odds are up there, but love you.
Tying into that, because, a stock Hellcat's going to pull, where should I, if the stock Hellcat, where am I going to be best for roll racing on a closed course, not the street, on a closed course? Should I do 40 rolls, 60 rolls, 80 rolls? Where is that car going to be happy?
So many variables within that one. Tire.
Heat, tire.
Yeah, tire. The
time of day.
Modifications, the rear gear you have in it.
Type of road you're on.
Yeah, there's so many variables. And the fact of the matter is, if you look at the peak, you get a Hellcat over 4,000 RPM on, it's butter. So the problem is getting traction. That's a big issue there. So naturally, if you're trying to make a hit while you're in peak traction or peak torque, traction's going to be difficult. So that's why sometimes it's better for a Hellcat to start in a higher gear at a lower RPM to allow momentum to kick in and get that traction there. So there's not a specific 40, 60, 47. I mean, it goes through it very quickly on most of them. So you got to know your vehicle and the tire setup, the street, the road, and your overall setup. So talk to me, your tuner. If I'm your tuner, we'll work on a tune for it or talk to your tuner. There's a lot of tricks we have in the system that will allow us to help you with traction on the hit. Don't recommend running a 15-inch radio, right, Jeff, for roll racing. Believe it or not, a thicker, taller sidewall is not really optimal for roll racing like it is dig racing. So just getting your overall setup in line goes a very long way. So talk to your tuner; he'll help you out with that and get you set up where you need to be. So
obviously, everyone's seen videos of like turbo cars brake boosting on the highways and whatnot. Is it beneficial for a PD car, or is it kind of put it in the gear and smack it?
Brake boosting? Yeah, you don't need to brake boost a PD car. The reason they're brake boosting a turbo car is to help with the lag. You know what I mean? A PD car, you got it right away. Yeah. So there's absolutely no reason to brake boost on it. Same thing with a centrifugal blower. As soon as you go and that bypass valve closes, you get all the boost you need at that given time. Turbos need a little bit of help depending on your turbo setup, how big they are, your engine setup, everything like that. So variables in play, there's not a specific answer to it. I have customers that go all ranges from 30 to 60, 80, even on the higher horsepower ones. So you guys are crazy, but yeah, it just depends on your setup. What else we got?
Kind of running out here. Do you have any off the top of your head you've seen recently?
Let me browse through and see.
Just 1 sec. Sorry, gang. Could you, should you boost a pre-Eagle 5.7? Yes.
Somebody say that?
No, but I did. It's fun, guys. It's a kind of cheap motor. You can just find line around and low compression.
Yeah.
Hurl boost at it.
Dude, the
turbos.
pre-Eagle ones love boost. Just crank it in there. Just crank it in.
Just...
Oh, I got one because somebody were talking about it, and actually someone were trying to come up with a solution on. So I know you talked about the vented catch can.
Yes, I did.
So, vented versus closed catch cans. So we offer, through Billet Evolution, multiple catch cans. We have our street version. So what's that's designed for? The street car, driving up and down, all around, grocery getter, taking kids to school, right?
My stock Charger.
Right.
Yeah.
My charger.
Yes.
Then you have your race catch cans. So the reason we call them race, off-road use, right?
Yep.
They are vented. So their sole purpose, vented catch cans, is to get rid of any crankcase pressure. Okay. So to break down what's happening with these and what you're doing with a catch can and why they're important. Okay. Street catch cans, or just a standard catch can, is basically a holding place for oil vapors. Okay. Because every engine has blow-by. Every engine has crankcase pressure. So we need a place for it to go. In OEM vehicles, they route it back into the intake to be reburnt, pass it through the catalytic converters to reduce emissions. Thank you. We can breathe better.
Yes.
Now, you know, once you get into super high horsepower applications, very high boost applications, race-specific applications, we don't want that oil going into our combustion chamber. So even on street cars, that's why you put catch cans in place, because it gives it a place for those oil vapors to go and one less chance of it being reintroduced into the intake. But when you get to real high boosted applications, you really can't get around it. So instead of venting it back into the intake, we just vent it to the atmosphere for race purposes only. So they're vented, right? That means that you have a direct hole going into your crankcase. Keep that in mind. So inside a crankcase, we have oil. We have some water from condensation that builds up over time. We have fuel, right, because it makes it past the rings. Blow-by, that stinks. You ever hear it smell exhaust? All of that is being mixed in the bottom of your crankcase and then venting out through these vented cans. So you can smell it inside your cab. Okay, so understand, if you order or install a vented race can, you're going to smell it. Okay, now we are working on some solutions trying to get around that. We are now we have the 5-axis. We have a little more ability with the catch cans, so we're working on a race street can that will have the ability to do both. So under normal driving conditions, it will do its job and recirculate it, and then under heavy load, it will vent during those episodes. But for the time being, that's what's available out there. So you understand that when you have a big hole, basically a filtered hole coming off of your crankcase, you're gonna smell it. Ways around it, you know, having your vents on and putting in recirc normally helps. My TRX has 2 vented cans. I'm in recirc and I don't smell a thing. I know other applications sometimes don't work out that well. If you have vents on the hood, it sometimes can make it around that. So, you know, just keep that in mind, that it is possible that with a vented can you are going to smell stuff. Okay, so for the time being, we are trying to come up with a solution to help with that, but right now, those are your 2 options, okay? So, also do...
There's a third option.
What's that?
If you get COVID, don't smell it.
Yeah, that's true, COVID, you don't smell it. The first strain of COVID.
Yes.
Anyways, so, but do keep in mind as well, depending on your application, your valve cover setup or internals, you don't want to run a fully recirculated catch can if you don't have a proper PCV valve or anything in place. Something we notice on aftermarket valve covers that are designed for overall venting, they don't fare well with recirculated catch cans because it basically creates a vacuum leak if you don't have a valve in place. So do keep that in mind. You have to be smart about how you set it up. But difference between the cans, that's something that I wanted to hit on because of what we've been hearing. So I see you got a couple more.
If you have belt slip, let's say for this gentleman, it is a scat pack with a Whipple. If adding nitrous, and in this case a 200 shot, will that increase belt slip? Will it stay about the same?
So belt slip is lack of traction on your belt system and from your pulleys in your belt, right? So it's very similar to that on the street. So look at your pulleys as your tire and then the belt the road, right? So what happens on the street if you spin your tire, if you accelerate quicker, you're going to spin your tire. So if you do a half throttle pull, right, your tires grip, aka the pulleys, to the road, the belt, right, and then you don't slip. You go wide open throttle and you got a lot of torque, all of a sudden you're spinning your tire, creating smoke, aka your pulley going faster on your belt will slip and create belt dust. So if you're having belt slip already and then you're introducing power on top of it, it is possible that you could amplify the belt slip. Why? Because that pulley of the supercharger is going to see 200 horsepower more worth of power, so it's going to increase the rate of RPM of how fastly it goes through the RPM, so it's going to spin more. So yeah, it is possible that if you're experiencing belt slip, that by throwing nitrous on, you could see more or even amplify the effect. So do keep that in mind. It's kind of the combination. Like I said, think of the belt as your tire and the pulley is your tire and the belt is the road. So if you introduce more power at any given time, it could slip. So if you're really struggling and nitrous becomes an option, you could always pulley up, get it to a point where you're not seeing belt slip, and then introduce the nitrous, okay? Because as long as you have the surface area and everything there, you should be okay. But if you are already experiencing belt slip, nitrous is not going to improve the situation. So hopefully that answers, Shane. I know it's something you're working on and struggling with, trying to get more power. So
Turbos.
Turbos are sadly on a setup like that, man. You got to do the 10 rib conversion.
Yep.
It's the downside of the 6 rib or even the 8 rib. It's just, you know, these are heavy boats, and the blowers are getting heavier because they're getting bigger. So you have two very heavy things that need help being moved, and you know, lack of, you know, that's like trying to, you know, launch a car on a 215 wide tire in the rear, right? Go get a Hellcat and put a stock tire, a 245, you know, from like a 392 on it and try and launch it. Yeah, right. What do? We try to put wider tires on it. Same thing when it comes to supercharger belts, is the more surface area you can get, the reduction of belt slip you might see. So, but it is the battle of horsepower. That's why turbos, there's no belt slip.
Not so much could you, should you, but I have a 2016 Hellcat Charger. The rear end is making a noise from the clutch chatter at very low speeds turning. Is that something that's common, or is that...
No.
No?
No, not common in the rear end. They're generally very quiet rear ends in regards to stock, you know, applications. Another reason why it's great that they take the power that they do. So clutch chatter and very so if you're saying clutch chatter, are you right? Is it a manual car or are you a auto car? Because
this is turning, so I would think that it would be the LSD trying to lock. But
if that's what he's referencing, yeah, it's not normal at all. No, it's not normal. So I would definitely check your fluid, see how burnt it is, see if there's metal in it. If he's referencing clutch chatter from like it's manual and you're chattering the clutch, you're just too low of RPM, but that's something different. So
could you... Yes.
Go ahead, next one.
Sorry. Could you, should you boost a vehicle with over 100,000 miles? I did. It's great.
So we've been seeing a lot more of it, which is good, guys. We obviously, that's why we're here, is modifying vehicles, right? We did actually have a full live video where we talked in depth about this, I want to say 4 or 5 weeks ago. So if you browse our live section, you know, we'll tap on it real quick. Should I, or, you know, could I modify my high mileage vehicle? Absolutely. This guy did it. I've done it on a few of my cars. We have cars in the shop now that we did it on. But we do have a very nice in-depth conversation with customers beforehand.
Yes.
Why? Okay. Did you show them the WK1 in the air?
I didn't really go too in depth.
Okay.
I can run back out at the end. Or...
It's all right. They get the idea.
Yeah.
So this is what you're facing in regards to a shop and a consumer when we're modifying a high mileage car. So what happens in the Midwest too, where we're at right now? What happens on a car when you drive it all year round? These things rust, right? So depending on you know, you want to put a cam in it. Guess what? We drop the subframe. Well, what happens when your subframe bolt is rusted in to the point it breaks when we take it out? That's not our fault. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to pay for that.
Yep.
It's just plain, you know, our packages, our rates are based on normal circumstances, just like dealers.
Yes.
If I'm going to drop a subframe, it's 4 bolts with all the disconnection pieces. You should take XYZ hours. Well, all of a sudden, I break 3 bolts in the subframe. Well, now, you know how to repair that? It's not fun.
No.
If you can, that's the other thing. So, this is something you have to be ready for, an increase in cost, okay?
Yes.
Whether it's from bolts breaking, whether it's from, as we take things apart, we inspect everything. I have another one, it's a 2012, high mileage, sitting on the lift. The reason it's still sitting on the lift, we were just doing a cam swap, bushings were worn out, motor mounts were toast. I mean, a ton was bad on this car, high mileage car. So, again, added cost, delays.
Yes.
It's not fun for you or I, because that was slated for a certain amount of window, and now I'm 2 weeks beyond waiting for parts. It's not good for a business. It's not beneficial for us, and it sucks for you guys as customers. Yeah. So, it's the expectation we set. Be ready for extended delays. Be ready for increased costs. Okay. The third thing, the big thing we like is, I want to throw a blower on my, you know, the example was a WK1, or I want to throw a turbo on my high mileage WK1. Cool. Motors generally don't do bad when it comes to introducing boosts. They're a little loose, so they can take the abuse a little better. It's not horrible, right? Well, what about the transmission? What about the transfer case? How many times have you done a trans flush on this vehicle, or the transfer case even? Rear end?
Yep.
So now all of a sudden you had 150 horsepower to a car that for 120,000 miles of its life had XYZ horsepower. So I just added 50% on top of that. Things start to break.
Yep.
Examples, I had a WK1, 110, 115,000 miles. We put a Pro Charger and E85 on it. Thing made 690 to the wheels. Guess what? A week later, it needed a trans.
Yep.
Okay? So it happens, right? Also, you know, we have these guys come in, high mileage on a 5.7, 6.1, 392. Hey, I want a cam swap. Cool, take it apart. You guys saw in the last two vlogs about the cam bearings. Again, we do our diligence and we inspect everything, right? We're touching it. We want to make sure it's optimal. It sucks, right? So all of a sudden, we have to wait, get cam bearings. Now we got to replace the cam bearings, added cost, delays, right? Things like that. The one charger we have in the air doesn't even have that many miles on it. And when we pulled the head off, his intake and exhaust valves on one cylinder were caked in oil. Just caked. I mean, horrible. One cylinder, not all, so it's not blow-by. Well, blow-by could be from the ring in that piston, but it's just one. Just one.
Not only that charger, with that 2016 Scat Pack I just pulled the motor on, it's a 2016, 30,000 miles.
Right.
Cylinder 7 is just coated. Even in the exhaust manifold, like there's buildup of oil.
And that's not even a high mileage.
No.
So now you quadruple the amount of miles on it.
Right.
What would happen if this vehicle came back to with 120,000 miles to do this swap, right? So these are things you got to consider and you can't blame the shops. Unless the shop goes, oh, you'll be fine, just do it. Let's go.
Yeah.
We have this talk with guys every day. I have one in my mailbox of a guy with a Ram that has 120,000 miles on it. And, you know, he wanted to do a cam because his lifter failed. And then he's like, oh, I'll throw a blower on it. I'll do it. And it's like,
oh, no.
You got to be ready. Yeah. You got to understand. These kill shops. I mean, it really does because, one, like I said, we have a very tight schedule. And we try to keep to it. But when we continue to run into delays, I had 3 cars with cam swaps that all had issues. That weren't our fault. It's just we took it apart and found things that weren't part of the normal plan, waited for the parts to come in, and, you know, 2 of those right now have long tube headers on it that they came in with the long tube headers and they have cracks in it, putting it back together. Ask yourself, the shop you went to, did they smoke test the headers when they put it back on? Because if not, I guarantee that's one of those cars that I'm remote tuning that has a bank that's lean, you know, because you didn't test it. So now these cars are delayed again. Right? They're delayed again because now we have to pull that exhaust manifold off, hopefully get it warranted by whoever they bought it through. And then, again, we didn't buy it. It came in on the car. So now as a shop, we have to push this car aside and move on to something else and don't get paid on it until it's done. It's not a good experience for anybody involved. You know, and you can't really take it out on the shop when, you know, we didn't do all the things leading up to it. So these are just things to kind of be conscious of. So high mileage vehicles, understand we will do it. Just understand it's going to cost you more, probably going to be delays, and then you got to be ready for additional cost down the road. And most of these vehicles are starting to hit an end of life, which is very sad to say, like a WK1.
Yeah, try and find an LSD for it.
Try to find rebuild kits for the T-case.
Yes.
I talked to my buddy Sipple, and he's scouring the world trying to find them, and he only has a few left and can't get any more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the aftermarket world isn't supporting them anymore because there's not many. So you're starting to hit a point where, you know, okay, yeah, I put a Pro Charger on it because it's still available in the field system. Well, now I can't build my T-case. What do I do? Buy a junkyard one and hope it lives, right?
Run a risk there. Again, it's high mileage, unknown life.
Shocks.
Same thing as,
Good luck finding shocks, right? So it's just these things that it's sad. It's very sad that this era is coming to an end like it is. And being it's not the LS community, that these aftermarket companies don't support it the same way. So it sucks, man. We're big fans of the OGs, and everybody knows me with the WK1s, but as much as I'd love to have one and enjoy it, I can't. It's just not possible. So, all right, guys, I think that was enough for today. We're all hungry, and I got to get back to work and knock these projects out. Thank you again for checking in. Keep the questions coming, and we'll be back next week.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.